This company called Eisenberg was taking orders for a motorcycle with a V8 engine, 3 liters in volume, and a power of over 480 horsepower. Zef Eisenberg, the founder of Eisenberg, is renowned for his land speed records. However, he is also recognized as a somewhat eccentric scientist in the realm of motorcycle construction. And this is his craziest project.
Eisenberg V8. Magnificent machine.
First of all, what is a V8 motorcycle and why did Zef probably build a better one? Take for example the Boss Hoss as the most famous motorcycle with a V-shaped 8. Did you see how big he is and his weight? His power does not seem as impressive when compared to his monstrous weight. There is an even crazier version of Rap with an inflatable V8 engine that boasts 1,000 horsepower, even more powerful, huge and ridiculous. And yeah, a motorcycle with an engine from a monster truck is definitely overkill. The most compact of them was the Moto Guzzi racing bike from the distant 60s. Then he naturally scared his pilots, outpaced suspensions, brakes, and racer skills for years. The most successful motorcycles suitable for use on roads with a V8 configuration are usually perfectly suited for large off-road vehicles or high-performance business sedans, were built in Australia. Jan Drysdale, a genius, built multiple incredible homemade motorcycles, including a series with V8 engines and displacements of 750 and 1000 cc. PGM with their V8 also performed excellently, squeezing a 2-liter V8 engine from 2 Yamaha R1 engines, with peak revs at 12,800 revolutions per minute into a lattice frame, taking out 334 horsepower from it and somehow keeping the curb weight at 242 kilograms. Zev came in a similar way to PGM, putting together a street fighter weighing 280 kilograms and with a power of 480 horsepower on regular fuel and 500 on high octane. Not only does the resulting motorcycle possess a record power-to-weight ratio of 1.78 horsepower per kilogram, but it also behaves and appears like a conventional motorcycle in terms of functionality and aesthetics. A very sleek and high-tech motorcycle. Zef Eisenberg, the founder of the Mad Max racing team, didn't just build such a crazy motorcycle for no reason. The New York spirit of a Brit has previously led him repeatedly to significant results in speed racing. Behind him is the record for the fastest gas turbine motorcycle, records for the fastest race on sand on 2 and 4 wheels. Eisenberg V8 was also involved in setting another record, but we'll discuss that in more detail later. He is also a massive fan of TT Island Man. Zef sponsored racer Daley Mattison in a total of 3 TT0 races with high hopes and great expectations for the year 2019 on Nottingham University's electric motorcycle. However, Mattison died in the race a day before he was supposed to perform. To honor Daley's memory, Zef souped up his bike and set 4 world speed records on it in September 1919. Outside of racing, Zef remained a hardcore businessman. In the 90s, he had his own sports nutrition company and was into bodybuilding for a long time. In July 1919, Mad Max Pizza was opened, and he also completed the Eisenberg V8 serial project. His skill in team sports, individual races, and building motorcycles was so great that in October 2019, he was awarded the Sims Medal for outstanding contribution to automotive innovations, including the Eisenberg V8. Eisenberg built this thing from scratch, working with one of the top engine designers in Britain to produce a compact flat V8 with a maximum RPM of 11,000. It has more in common with a Ferrari powertrain than with the low-revving American Boss Hoss engines, showcasing Eisenberg's expertise and attention to detail. The engine weighs only 88 kilograms. Here, listen and imagine having this thing between your legs. The company RPE, Radical Precision Engines, which stands for Radical High Precision Engines, is focused on enhancing existing serial engines and constructing distinctive motors derived from them. On their website, you can find info about the upgraded Hayabusa engine with over 220 horsepower and the V8 made from two Hayabusa engines, which delivers 430 horsepower and weighs only 22 kilograms more than the stock Bussy engine, which weighs 105 kilograms. Zev set his eyes on the last one. Together they built another version of the V8 with a volume of 3,000 cubic centimeters and a power output of 480 horsepower on regular fuel and 500 on high-octane fuel. But the most interesting thing is that according to their claims, they managed to achieve an engine weight of 88 kilograms. That's a whole 5 kilograms more than the stock Hayabusa 4. The Eisenberg V8 is equipped with 8 independent throttle valves featuring adjustable geometry for optimal airflow and response to the throttle, ensuring the best performance and efficiency. The dampers are controlled by a special Atmotech control unit. There are modes of operation that limit the engine power, disabling, for example, half of its cylinders. So in rainy mode, the power drops to a laughable 240 horsepower, just 240 horses in the rain. In addition, experienced racers will receive a special red key that, when activated, allows full control of the Eisenberg V8 without any electronic interference. It took more than 2 years to develop a special 6-speed gearbox, and according to Eisenberg, the transmission box was tested on a stand and patented. To sustain such high power, the transmission is furnished with certain special components, such as interchangeable primary gears that are visible on MotoGP racing prototypes. Due to the high torque of the engine and its position in the motorcycle chassis, a problem has arisen. That's why the gearbox has a balanced centrifugal clutch. The clutch rotates opposite to the crankshaft, reducing vibrations. Zev states vibrations are low enough to balance a coin on the block without it falling off. Besides that, the motorcycle has a swing arm with a concentric design and geometry that prevents squatting in order to reduce chain tension issues, because here they use the less durable 530, not the heavier 630. Thanks to her, friction level decreases and engine doesn't lose power. The swing itself is made using CNC and aluminum blanks, from which several kilograms are cut off to reduce the weight of the motorcycle. The motorcycle, particularly around the engine, was designed to withstand the full load on the frame and transmission. The real work problems arose from the moment the team realized the full extent of the work needed to reduce heating. This is a serious problem. To deal with it, they installed a little radiator under the seat, which is meant for low-speed driving, as well as a big one in the front for high-speed driving. The main radiator minimizes aerodynamic impact. ProDrive aided by conducting computational hydrodynamics, analyzing flow of water and air around the engine for design optimization and reduced drag. In the remaining portion, as you can envision, this bicycle is equipped with a plethora of high-quality particulars, which encompass BST carbon wheels, a customized nitron shock absorber, ISR brakes, and a specially crafted Akrapovic exhaust system with ceramic coating. The motorcycle also possesses a multimedia screen with a complete data recorder and internet access. With that type of power, you can confidently anticipate some substantial top speed. During a few tests, the Eisenberg V8 engine achieved a speed of 333 km per hour. Zev claims that the bike can reach a top speed of 362 km per hour. And all this without using a nitrous oxide turbocharger and a fairing. Plus, by adding a fairing, the maximum speed can increase up to 402 km per hour. And this is just downright outrageous for a motorcycle that's meant for use on public roads. The motorcycle went through engine bench tests and road tests to make sure that the production motorcycle provides smooth clutch engagement, maneuverability, proper gearbox operation, suspension, engine cooling quality, and so on. British motorsport giants ProDrive helped them out with this, lending a hand to Eisenberg during the final stages of regulatory approval. By the way, orders are only accepted from drivers who know how to handle power, with invitations to exclusive events. They were supposed to start producing motorcycles in 2020. The price was expected to be sky high, £150,000 sterling. But whether they began or not is unclear. In the same year, Zef Eisenberg tragically died in a car crash during another try to break the speed record. The company's website is empty and production volumes are unknown. Most likely we'll see test drives of these phenomenal motorcycles, as the resulting product has a crazy sound comparable only to Formula One cars. Beautifully designed chassis and unparalleled acceleration with such energy efficiency. In other words, everything that people love about motorcycles. Daniel Fisher, an AMA superbike racer, saw an opportunity to fill a gap in the market for mid-size sport bikes to give enthusiasts a worthy exotic experience by introducing the world's first motorcycle with a monocoque frame, as well as creating a truly American sport bike that could compete with the Japanese in their own game with good performance, good quality, and a good price. The American-made Fisher MRX will be the culmination of several years of trials, errors, failures, and massive developments. The outcome was a motorcycle with a highly controversial appearance, but one that enthusiasts have been longing for years. A high-performance two-cylinder supersport with a one-of-a-kind frame that was perfect in every way, except for its looks. Let's say you want to buy a middleweight sport bike with a two-cylinder engine. Just think for a sec, how many options do you have? No, definitely not the Ducati 848. He would have been in the category of superbikes until the racing rules were changed. The Kawasaki Ninja 650 and its direct competitor, the Suzuki SV 650, can hardly be called sport motorcycles, as they are aimed at beginners and do not have proper suspension out of the box. Think really hard and you'll realize that there was practically no market for two-cylinder sport motorcycles, despite the constant mumbling and weak demand from those ghostly figures they constantly call enthusiasts. In the past 20 years, if you needed a small, light, easy to handle, not powerful two-cylinder machine with nimble chassis, you'd go for the Suzuki SV 650 and quickly upgrade the stock suspension and brakes. Now the market is finally ready and models like Aprilia RS 660, KTM RC 8C, and Yamaha R7 are starting to appear. Please don't confuse it with the ultra-rare R7007. We're talking about the last 2 decades. It was the year 2001 and Daniel Fisher, an AMA racer and former participant of the Aprilia Cup from Chicago, Illinois, had an idea for an American-made sport bike. No competition. Walter Rarick delayed unveiling his ill-fated V-Royer until 2007. Eric Buell worked under the heel of Harley, limiting himself to a pharmacy dealer network and using outdated Sportsters. His fancy schmancy Helican engine won't show up until 2008, just a few months before his company goes belly up due to the economic downturn. So as a result, there was a huge gap in the market that Fisher hoped to fill with a product in the USA that would touch on ordinary patriotic American feelings. That would be a badass sport bike that would revive the stagnant American motorcycle industry. And initially MRX didn't start out as an affordable sports motorcycle. He was thinking about how to launch the production of a real American superbike that could kick the asses of the big boys from Asia and Europe while chewing gum. The Fisher motor racing concept, named after Dan Mercer's son, involved the creation of a modern chassis based on an existing engine. The initial option was the V-shaped two-cylinder Rotax V990 engine with a 60-degree angle of separation, which you may recall from bikes like the Aprilia Milla and Tuono. So the prototypes will be called MR1000. Fisher claimed that the V-shaped pair got on board completely by accident. Rotax made contact with him after he placed a wanted ad in the AMA Classifieds in the year 2001, in response to his post. Gemini Technologies Systems, a well-known engineering firm from Wisconsin which developed the acclaimed Harley-Davidson VR 1000 frame, has created a new platform based on their experience in superbike racing, incorporating MotoGP know-how. The most interesting thing is the appearance drawn by the designer with over 30 years of experience, Glinker. His design has created many stunning motorcycles from renowned brands, for example the Lightning LS 218. Then this occurred. Honestly, the Fisher looks like a dull Chinese knockoff of the Honda CBR 600RR with a scooter engine from the 2000s. This honestly does not measure up to the level of many motorcycles from the celestial empire of our days. He seems kind of toy-like, unreal, and the underseat exhaust looks like something foreign, installed in PVC. But you can and should turn a blind eye to this, because in all other respects the bike is amazing. They intended to commence production in 2004 and conducted some encouraging experimental design work in 2003 when multiple prototypes were incorporated into the production process. Unfortunately, there was a little pushback from Aprilia against what Rotax offered for Fisher, which they considered their own engine. The V990 was the only big 4-stroke twin-cylinder engine in the Rotax lineup at that time, and Aprilia considered it their own development. They were the sole company utilizing it and desired to remain in that position. They definitely didn't want him to be used by a beginner competitor. Why didn't Aprilia make a fuss in 2006 when their longtime partner Rotax BRP stuffed the same dumb motor into their Can-Am Spyder? Most likely Aprilia didn't see any threats in the Canadian trike aimed at snowmobile drivers. It turns out that Fisher was prematurely tied to Rotax, who swiftly offered their engine for his project and never once hinted that he might not be allowed to use the V990 in production. However, as soon as Aprilia spoke up, Fisher was cut off from Rotax. Emster 1000 kicked the bucket, all ready to go into production, but Fisher kept on trucking. Despite losing the Austrian heart, the MR chassis has become a good starting point for further development and engine transplant. Gemini developed a one-of-a-kind frame design for Fisher using a cast alloy, with the involvement of Caterpillar, which they referred to as trailer spar. Upon initial observation, it is simple to assume that wide flat stringers are merely a typical hollow two-beam diagonal frame. However, in actuality, the frame is a totally distinctive design, which was the initial monocoque frame ever provided on a production vehicle. If you closely examine the majority of production frames, you will observe that they are composed of multiple cast sections that have been welded together. The Fisher design eliminates the need for multiple parts and adds a bonus in the form of strictly controlled rigidity. The subframe was designed in a similar manner, with the aim of reducing the number of manufacturing operations involved. The part of the nickname trailer spar refers to its internal structure, which has triangular edges embedded in the inner part of the beams. Fisher claimed this hybrid design offers the best of both worlds, the rigidity and lightweight of a diagonal frame with the controlled flex of a lattice structure. The thing is, the motorcycle frame has to have a regulated stiffness, and here's why. Imagine a motorcycle in a leaned position. If the speed of passing the turn is high enough, there may be a situation where both the front and rear suspensions, under the influence of centrifugal force, compress by 100%. In the event that occurs, any small protrusion extending from the asphalt will result in the wheels losing grip with the road surface and the motorcycle sliding or toppling over. But even if the suspension is not fully compressed, the force vector applied to the wheel in the turn is not exactly in the direction of suspension compression, but at a certain angle. It's difficult to manage the fork and pendulum with forces. They are designed to work only in their movement direction. That's why the frame stiffness can only be increased up to a certain limit, so that it takes on the role of a kind of spring and absorbs rigid lateral loads that the suspension can't handle. Moreover, increasing the stiffness of the frame often leads to its heaviness, and excess weight is our enemy. The last thing to be wary of excessive stiffness is the danger of losing the feel of the motorcycle or otherwise losing informativeness. The thing is, the pilot feels how the motorcycle holds the road while riding precisely thanks to the vibrations that occur in the loaded chassis. If the frame is too rigid, some vibrations will disappear or their amplitude will decrease, making it harder for the racer to recognize the tire grip boundary with the asphalt. On the other hand, we all know damn well what happens when the frame is too flexible. The handling is getting worse, the motorcycle tends to wobble, precise control becomes an impossible task. And it turns out that unlike a car, where the stiffer the chassis, the better, the rigidity of a motorcycle frame should be very optimal, at the level of the golden mean. Fisher tried to create the perfect balance of stiffness and flexibility to ensure exceptional maneuverability, and according to most assessments, they managed to build an excellent chassis. That's all good, but without the AMR engine, it was just going to be a well-designed blank. The solution came, as they say, out of nowhere. Hyosung, a South Korean manufacturer of small displacement motorcycles, released their first adult motorcycle in 2004 with the Comet and GT 650 models. Back then, there was a lot of commotion because this newbie turned out to be the twin brother of the Suzuki SV 650 twins. There were rumors that Hyosung was involved in assembling and manufacturing Suzuki components offered on outsourcing. Others claimed that Hyusun replaced one or maybe several engineers who worked on the DSV 650, which sounds a bit strange because the 650 was built on the basis of a 400 cubic engine and was not developed from scratch. Anyway, the resemblance between Suzuki and the Korean newcomer was noticeable. Both were modern 90-degree V-twin engines with a displacement of 650 cubic centimeters, chain drive, 2 overhead camshafts, and 4 valves per cylinder. Both featured liquid cooling, a 6-speed transmission, and their power ratings were incredibly close to each other. However, contrary to the popular myth, the Hudson engine is not an exact copy or an updated version of the SV engine. The cylinder diameter and piston stroke are different. This is a completely different design, and they have no common details. Fisher saw the Hyusun engine as a cost-effective alternative, and Hyusun turned out to be a willing partner. Hyusun could provide the company with a ready, reliable, and pleasant engine that they could install in their beautiful frame. You could also appropriate any other necessary small items from the Korean donor, which would help to decrease the overall expenses and lower the retail price. Suddenly, the world's top sport bike transformed into a budget supersport, and Fisher modified the marketing to match the new direction. This was originally supposed to be an American-made product, or at least American-assembled, but now it will be keeping up and staying competitive with the Asian manufacturers in the highly competitive and fiercely contested middleweight sports category. This will be an affordable and exotic product. The company would emphasize the quality of Fisher components and developments, offering a price that is comparable to mass-produced options, but with a better value for money proposition. The MR1000 is now referred to as the MRX 650. The Hyusun engine was left mostly unchanged, but it now features an air intake positioned between the headlights and a complete Micron exhaust system. The peak power was claimed to be around 80 horsepower. Taking into account the inertia overboost, which is the same figure that Hyusun claimed for his standard GT 650, although Hyusun's figure usually turned out to be very optimistic in real tests. A prototype with forced induction was built as a test stand for a possible future model with forced induction. The idea was that the turbo model would be the flagship built instead of the model with a larger displacement. Production was halted at the facility in Pocomoke, Maryland. The first MRX prototype was shown with an Öhlins fork and shock absorber and Brembo radial brakes. But in the production version, they decided to ditch the trendy brakes and front parts in favor of more modest equipment. Now, the fork was made up of inverted 43mm elements taken from the Huison GT 650R with preload compression adjustment. Fisher mentioned that certain internal modifications were implemented on Korean forks in order to enhance control. The brake discs, wheels, and calipers were directly sourced from the Comet, but they received enhancements in the form of stainless steel brake lines and a front master cylinder from Brembo. The front Brembo calipers were optional, but it seems that they became standard for later versions. The claimed dry weight was 180 kilograms. The MRX series kept the rear shock absorber from Öhlins, which became a key marketing element for Fisher and one of the most notable features of the motorcycle. The highly developed American frame and swing, unfortunately, went unnoticed by most people who preferred to drool over the fancy Swedish shock absorber. While most people were surprised to find Öhlins on a motorcycle costing less than $10,000, it's worth noting that Öhlins produces a wide range of shock absorbers, ranging from mid-range coilovers with basic settings for a few $100s, up to world superbike specification racing shocks which are more costly than a slightly pre-owned vehicle. Guess which one MRX had? By 2006, production-ready prototypes were sent to the press, and Alan Cathcart wrote a notable review, published in the December issue of Motorcyclist magazine for 2006. He praised the new motorcycle. Cathcart noted a few minor drawbacks, but overall was impressed with the performance and quality of the innovative brand, adding a few phrases to strengthen the Made in America image. At the end of 2006, Fisher delivered about 20 bikes to his first customers, but full-scale production was still a long way off. For the year 2007, only 50 bikes were planned, and in the subsequent years, production was expected to gradually increase to more than 1,000 bikes per year, once production, sales, and dealer network were properly organized. We were offered upgraded models of R, as well as a range of options to improve MRX at the factory with the help of a bunch of clever and expensive parts. You could easily raise the price of the MRX by about $20,000, which would eliminate the selling point of the motorcycle, but it would allow you to customize the bike to your liking right at the factory. And then 2008 happened. Boutique brands around the world have collapsed, there was no dealer network, so the company relied on direct orders. The development was limited, and the motorcycle remained more or less unchanged. While the idea of an inflatable engine was thrown out, what plans are there for a model with a larger displacement? It's interesting that despite the statement about delivering 20 bikes in 2006 and building at least 50 in 2007, Fisher MRX No. 1 was delivered to the customer in Minnesota in 2009. In 2010, they announced an updated model of the MRX 650L, which was basically a standard MRX with a lowered seat. Meanwhile, marketing was in a slump if you don't count the weird press releases, and the website continued to look horribly outdated. Despite the fact that the product had potential and was backed by engineering, the company's attempt to sell MRX was a disaster. The brand swiftly dissolved into obscurity. After the initial excitement died down, typical critical remarks from enthusiasts started to appear in forum discussions, marking the beginning of its decline in popularity. Many people were deterred by using the Hudson engine, which didn't have a good reputation, and a lot of individuals questioned using carburetors on a modern motorcycle, especially considering that Houston Comet had switched to fuel injection by that time. Athletes were laughing at the concept of a super sports motorcycle with 80 horsepower, and out loud they wondered what happened to the promised version with the made-up one. The recurring observation was that it would be more intelligent to purchase an SV650 and utilize the remaining funds to implement some enhancements to it. This eloquently demonstrates how challenging it was to enter such a market with a completely new motorcycle, regardless of the attractiveness and fairness of its price. In those rare cases when people managed to see and ride on a Fisher, most of them noted that the quality of the components left much to be desired, especially those parts that were stolen from Comet. Turns out, not many people noticed the patriotism, especially considering the amount of South Korean parts that were bolted onto the MRX. On the other hand, nobody really complained about the price or the level of standard equipment, and those who actually drove them noted that the handling was excellent and the engine was suitable for everyday driving, if not impressively powerful. Skepticism is a genuine obstacle when it comes to selling motorcycles. Even if the product is competitive, bikers can be a fickle and deeply ingrained group that is unlikely to choose an untested brand. By 2012, a small advertisement was placed on the company's website homepage. MRX is sold out and no longer being produced. Stay tuned for the latest news. No extra details are provided. Dan Fisher tried to build a completely American superbike, and in the end created an interesting supersport that answered the calls of enthusiasts who wanted a lightweight, maneuverable, high-tech sport motorcycle with a friendly engine. Regrettably for Fisher, the desires they assert they have and the items that individuals will truly purchase are two entirely distinct matters of great significance. The MRX 650 fought against serious competition, general skepticism, poor marketing, and a prevailing apathetic attitude towards a motorcycle with a South Korean engine and a strange design. In all these debates, everyone has said goodbye to the possibility of getting a truly unique motorcycle. A motorbike with a specific twist. In a nutshell, a truly exotic motorcycle that is rarely, or rather never, expected to have a reasonable monetary value.
The flagship of the Kawasaki company, the Ninja H2R, which was unveiled in 2015, completely overshadowed the entire motorcycle industry with its achievements. But did you know that almost simultaneously, in the general public, a motorcycle was introduced, developed and built by an Australian engineer with over 20 years of experience in MotoGP, WSBK and F1? PGM, a motorcycle that underwent a 7-year development process. It is equipped with a high-revving 2-liter V8 engine, which was built based on 2 Yamaha R1 engines and has a peak power of 334 horsepower. Actually, this is the most powerful production motorcycle in the world, and today we'll get to know it better and try to compare it to the iconic H2R. Paul Milani, an experienced Australian engineer, the creator and owner of the brand, gathered a team of 3 equally experienced specialists. Clayton Stearman, a specialist in engine development and construction, Neville Hazelman, a master with over 40 years of experience in engine preparation, especially VSBK, and Sean O'Shane, a guy with experience in tuning and preparing racing motorcycles. Together they brought this engine into the world. Why V8? Answer by Paul.
Alright, so you claim that this is the most powerful production motorcycle in the world.
Yes.
So can you tell about that one, please?
Okay. The engine is made completely from scratch.
Okay.
It is a 2-liter V8.
Okay. So you have made a V8 out of 2 liter.
2 1-liter
Okay.
Yamaha R1 engines.
Alright, okay.
Yes. We have 334 horsepower at the output shaft,
Okay.
at the counter shaft, and 214 Newton meters of torque.
Okay.
Riding this bike is, so far no one's had more than 28% throttle. It is not possible.
It's not possible
No.
to...
This will spin the back wheel at 200 kilometers an hour in 6 gear.
Okay. In 6th gear, you are telling we can experience a backspin?
Yes, backspin.
200
kilometers an hour in 6 gear. Yes.
Okay, okay.
The torque is absolutely phenomenal.
So how do you compare this motorcycle with other big motorcycles like the H2R?
For a start, the H2R is a 1-liter,
Yes.
4-cylinder,
Yes.
but supercharged.
Yes.
So this one is naturally aspirated.
Okay.
If we wanted to put a supercharger on that, maybe we get 500 or 600 horsepower. But I am not interested in supercharging.
Okay.
That's, for me, cheating.
Supercharger is cheating.
Yeah, supercharger and turbo. You know, you take an engine, you bolt it on. Anyone can do that. But to build it from the beginning it takes a little bit more. Don't get me wrong, they are very legitimate way to get horsepower, but it's not really.
Paul knew to get more power, turbocharge or build a mean naturally aspirated engine. And he chose a more interesting path. Together with 3 masters, he creates this productive engine. And as he claims himself, 334 horsepower is not the limit. According to him, you can easily take off 400 from him. And you just listen to this sound. Yep, that's the sound of a smooth-talking V8. And now a few words about the technical part of the motorcycle. The engine is an 8-cylinder, V-shaped, with a displacement of 1996 cubic centimeters, with 5 valves per cylinder. The crankshaft is made from EN36 steel at high temperature. The engine is equipped with 45mm Mikuni throttle valves. Motec provides the brains and software for this motorcycle. As mentioned, the engine produces 334 horsepower. We're very demanding when it comes to the quality of our products. That's why practically all the parts are made of aluminum, which ensures strength, durability, and high performance. The frame is made of chromoly alloy. Got myself some fancy Marzeccini forged aluminum wheels. The bike's appearance is entirely carbon fiber, and ultimately, a fully titanium exhaust system from Akrapovic. All this is to compensate for the relatively heavy B8. The weight of the motorcycle with all fluids and a full tank is 242 kilograms, which is only 26 kilograms more than the H2R. Just a reminder, H2R is a track monster that is not allowed on public roads, while BGM is a representative of the naked class. And yes, comparing them is a thankless task, so to speak, but their technical characteristics are just too close. And when it comes to the question of maximum speed, the manufacturer has a specific slogan in response, which is also a marketing strategy of the company, and it sounds as follows, and I must say it sounds quite good at the very least. And here is what Paul himself says about it.
Okay, so you any reports on the top speed figures or something?
Well, once again, this bike is as you can see, is a naked bike.
Okay.
And the problem with naked bike is, of course, that it has a practical top speed because of the wind factor.
Yes.
We are not chasing top speed. We claim that horsepower because that's what it is, and eventually the back wheels just start spinning. So top speed, yeah, if you put a fairing on it, for sure it would do 350 kilometers an hour. There's no reason why not. If you're looking for top speed, there are two things: power to weight ratio and aerodynamics. So, increase the aerodynamics of this machine. The power to weight ratio is already there.
So, it turns out that our hidden antagonist, the H2R Ninja, is not much heavier than its opponent, but on the other hand, it has a higher peak power and significantly greater torque. But here again, it's about the target direction of motorcycles. One is a track sport bike, the other is a purely urban naked, but hardly urban, of course. And the approaches to motorcycle execution are completely different. One was handled by departments, while the other was designed by 4 people. In general, I'll say it again, you can't compare these motorcycles at all. But here's what I personally would look at, and I think you would too, is how fast PGM can go in a high-speed race, naturally with a fairing. So let's keep an eye on the fate of this monster together. Oh yeah, almost forgot. A significant downside of this motorcycle is its price, $180,000 US.
Today in our time, it's unlikely that anyone can be impressed by a big motorcycle engine, but in the 60s, people had a slightly different idea about motorcycles. Half a century ago, a German motorcycle enthusiast would forever change the perception of a powerful and fast bike by building a motorcycle with a car engine, later called the first hyperbike. Meet Friedel Munch and his motorcycle Munch Mammoth. Friedel Munch was born on the 6th of January 1927 in the city of Dorn-Assenheim. Back in his youth, Friedel got into two-wheel technology. Right after finishing school, he starts training as an auto mechanic, and at the age of 17, he was drafted into the army, where he served successfully as a mechanic. After the war, Munch started a small workshop in the basement where he mostly fixed motorcycles. Friedel took on all sorts of models and fixed them up, which basically laid the foundation for future existence. In a well-equipped workshop, they could fix absolutely anything that came their way, and only difficulties with obtaining new spare parts forced the young mechanic to improvise. At the same time, Father Friedel is running the Horax branch in Friedberg. Later, Munch Jr. gets into racing and receives additional education, managing to simultaneously prepare his own hand-tuned 500cc Horax C5 for his first ever race in his life. In spring 1948, he competes in a race at the Hockenheim Ring, demonstrating an average speed of 147 km per h in training races, astonishing everyone. But in the real race, Frideliu has bad luck, and after only a few laps, his motorcycle fails. The engine seized up due to overheating. But Munch persists, works on the design, adds a dry cutter lubrication system to the engine, and names it Preficus, which means sneaky thing in German. But the rivals didn't idle, and now Frideliu's motorcycle needed more power. The old single-cylinder engine no longer satisfied Muncha, so he's developing a new cylinder head with 2 camshafts for the new 500cc twin-cylinder engine. Because this car had few similarities with the original Horax engine, he decided to name it the Munch Special. Later, after the crash, Friedel still quits racing and dedicates himself completely to developing and constructing motorcycles. Nevertheless, thanks to the races, people discovered a talented designer. In 1955, there was a little break, after which Friedel gets a position at Horax Company in the racing testing department. But just 6 months later, he quits his job, and a year later, the company stops producing motorcycles and Munch buys up all the production equipment. By the year 1964, Friedel develops an amazing drum brake and sells it with great success to racing teams. A massive 12-inch drum made of a magnesium alloy would instantly stop anything it stood on with just a touch of the hand. An example of a Munch construction on a Norton motorcycle. By 1966, the first prototype of his famous motorcycle, the Munch Mammoth TTS, was already ready. At the start of the project, Friedel planned to build a 4-cylinder engine using 2-cylinder Horax Imperator engines. The idea for this engine came to him at Horax, but in reality, facing difficulties during construction and realizing that a racing engine is unlikely to be suitable for a road motorcycle, Munch rejects Horax and starts looking for a more practical solution, with the main criteria being power, reliability, and ease of repair. And who would have thought but Friedel discovers such a feature in a small German car NSU Prince 1000. By the way, his engine had only 55 horsepower with a working volume of 1 liter, but by putting it in a motorcycle base, Munch got a real hyperbike of that time. The ultimate road motorcycle loaded with cutting-edge electronics and blazingly fast, with an impressive top speed of 225 kilometers per hour. In the 1960s, it was simply a legal rocket. Due to its brutal appearance, the bike was instantly nicknamed a mammoth at the presentation. Overall, the bike was very high-tech, but definitely not your average kind. For instance, it took 2 keys to start it. Initially, there was the right one responsible for the headlight, dimensions, and turn signals. The motorcycle started with the left key. This was in the 60s. The motorcycle had such a torque that no wheel could withstand that load. So Friedel developed a rear wheel made of an aluminum alloy with a fancy shape, which later became the motorcycle's trademark. By the way, this was the first production bike with alloy wheels, like the first 4-cylinder motorcycle that appeared long before the inline Japanese ones. The drive chain was well lubricated and enclosed in a sealed housing, which protected it from dirt and water, making motorcycle maintenance easier. To save weight, the frame, contrary to the norms of that time, was made not of steel, but of the same magnesium alloy. Overall, the motorcycle was top-notch and reliable. He not only looked, but also felt like a true German. In the end, he was one of them. But this thing cost a pretty penny. In the 60s, it cost around $4,000, while, for example, Harley-Davidson was priced at about $1,500. And the motorcycle was almost perfect, except for its size and weight. But on the other hand, the bike handled the track perfectly. The long wheelbase, along with the heavy weight, improved the stability of the motorcycle. Also, this bike had rear suspension on it, shocks from Cone, and a front fork from the British Rickman or the Italian Siriani. Ultimately, the 1967 Munch Mammoth TTS motorcycle had an onboard engine. With increased volume up to 1,200 cc, With 88 GP and later with an upgraded injection, this version delivered a solid 100 horses. For thrill seekers, it was quite a thrill. Versions with 1300 cubic centimeters and even 1400 cubic turbocharged version with a claimed power of 143 horsepower. Despite the success and greatness of the motorcycle, Friedel Munch never managed to establish a serious mass production. He was an outstanding engineer, but not a very adept businessman. Financial challenges were constant companions of Munch, leading him to bankruptcy in 1971. Friedel had to sell off all the rights to his company. Later on, he'll come back with a new project, a 2-liter monster with 260 horsepower. Friedel Munch died in April 2014, having created over 500 versions of his motorcycle throughout his life.
Ich träume und die Welt erzittert.
After the company went bankrupt in 1971, Friedel repeatedly tried to revive production, resulting in the emergence of new motorcycle models. From 73 to 77, Munch produced the Horax 1400 motorcycles, then in 84 the Titan 1600 was born, and already in 1989, after the construction of the Titan 2000, Munch finally decides to permanently retire from motorcycle production. Most likely that's how it would have occurred if not for a man named Thomas Petch. Thomas was a die-hard fan of Munch's works, keeping an eye on Fred's company's fate, which has experienced both highs and lows after its bankruptcy, the idea of reviving the brand sparks. In his head, he's envisioning a modern motorcycle with all the features of the brute force and grandeur of a classic mammoth. In the summer of 1977, Thomas takes the return flight, where a fine gentleman is seated next to him. In a sincere talk with him, Petch mentions Munch motorcycles and learns that Friedel Munch is this person's neighbor. And Thomas, without thinking twice, asked him if it was possible to meet up with Friedel. A little later, Thomas gets a call and finds out that Friedel Munch would be happy to meet him. The ultimate result of that fateful and pivotal meeting will be the highly anticipated Munch Mammoth 2000, a groundbreaking innovation in its field. The second Mammoth Muncher, even today after 15 years, simply amazes with its features. A row-mounted turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, built on the basis of a 16-valve cylinder head from Cosworth with a volume of 1998 cubic centimeters, delivers a whopping 260 horsepower and 295 nanometers of torque. And the peak is already reached at 3,000 revolutions per minute. From the start, the peak is reached at just 3,000 revolutions per minute. For comparison, the most powerful sport bike or hyperbike today, the Kawasaki H2R, has 326 horses and 165 Newton-meters of torque in its arsenal. The Triumph Rocket 3 is considered one of the most powerful power cruisers today, with 146 horsepower and 221 Newton-meters of torque. In the 2000s, this beast defeated Hayabusa, but now falls short of expectations. Oh, forget about those production motorcycles. Back in the day, even MotoGP prototypes had less power. And only with the April RC3 Cube in 2002 and its pneumatic timing drive, they reached a level of 260 horsepower. The engine ran smoothly, had a rich sound, started pulling from as low as 1,000 revolutions per minute, and reached a peak value just over 5,000, which is atypical for a motorcycle. But the originality of the solution did not end with the closest engine. The dry weight of the motorcycle was a whopping 354 kilograms. And that's despite the fact that the bike used magnesium alloys and carbon fiber parts. Due to the weight, for better handling and power transmission in the lower part of the motorcycle, right behind the oil pan, there was simply no room for a massive swing arm and a huge exhaust, so a pair of shock absorbers from White Power were installed. Another one of the many exceptional technical solutions in this one-of-a-kind motorcycle. The front suspension consisted of a 43 mm inverted Öhlins fork. All of this power was halted by a set of 320mm brake discs along with two 8-piston calipers in the front and a 280mm brake disc with a 2-piston caliper in the rear, I must emphasize. Taking responsibility for the production of the new Mammoth, Thomas Persch, inspired by the idea of reviving the Munch brand, created a truly exclusive, incredibly powerful monster that not everyone could handle. The journalists who were lucky enough to test drive this motorcycle had the following to say about it. The engine on this motorcycle is something out of this world. At 3,000 revolutions per minute, the output power is comparable to a meteorite. The performance chart should be like a skyscraper. I was advised to give it full throttle. What? Are you serious? You can most likely completely twist the throttle if you load up on tranquilizers, thoroughly study the motorcycle, and find a wide open space, preferably a straightaway. In the turns, this thing is highly unpredictable. In those days, there were no traction controls to be found. At one point, I thought the clutch was slipping, but it turned out to be the rear 200mm tire. Up until the fourth gear, the motorcycle was leaving black streaks on the asphalt. All this despite the fact that the engine was detuned from 300 horsepower to 260 and limited to a top speed of 250 kilometers per hour, because Pesh figured that would be more than enough. And he did not really make an error. However, as time has demonstrated, the destiny of the initial moment caught up with the second one. Despite Thomas's excitement and enthusiasm for the bike, the production was too unprofitable. The wheel frame, pendulum, clutch, gearbox, everything is designed and built around this turbo monster from Cosworth, which obviously cost a lot, and ultimately led to a price tag of 86,000 euros in 2002. And later, Petchu will even have to sell several copies at double the price. In the end, in April 2002, a businessman from Würzburg hit the emergency brake and brought production to a halt. A grand total of 15 units were built, out of which 8 were sold. The remaining 7 units stayed in the possession of Thomas Picha. But despite the failures, the motorcycles of Great Munch deserve our attention no less than other rare and exotic motorcycles on our channel.